Welcome to Steel City Growth. I'm your host, Bill Ildenfritz. Each week, we'll explore the passions, expertise, and experiences of business owners and founders in the greater Pittsburgh area. Steel City Growth is proudly sponsored by Murphy Business of Pittsburgh, committed to providing exceptional services to meet all your business needs. Let's dive in. Well, today, I'm really excited to meet with my next guest. He has personally helped me grow my business, and now I have the honor of calling him my friend. He has over 25 years experience in strategic leadership positions with a special focus on encouraging economic growth. He's a public speaker who has spoken at various small business events and conferences, mainly within the Pittsburgh area. He's a member of the Team Pennsylvania Board of Directors, collaborating with leaders to enhance the state economic landscape. He's the CEO and co-founder of Beam Collaborative and past owner of Keep It Simple Training and Development. Joel Burstein, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Great to be here.
Well, Joel, this is the first question we ask everybody. Are you ready?
I am.
What is the number one most important strategy for growing your business?
Being on a podcast with Bill Ildenfritz.
Well, thank you, Joel.
You're very welcome, Bill. No, I think the number one strategy, especially in this day, is really automation, AI, and I think it's really taken off. I mean, I don't recall any technology moving at the rate that AI has moved. I mean, even when we had the internet come out in the what was that, the 90s? It didn't get down to the point where there was enough information that you could use it in a regular, consistent basis by like 2 years. AI has commoditized so many things in 2 years. I mean, it's rapid. I mean, even the cell phone didn't. I mean, we had PDAs in the 90s from Palm way before the iPhone even came out in 2007. I mean, you're talking about 10, 12 years somewhere in there before we really started to get handhelds. And AI has really, really just shifted the landscape at a pace that we just have never seen. And so it's a really tricky environment with tariffs, with uncertainty in the market, with finding a workforce that if you're not looking into this stuff to cut costs, be more efficient, then you're missing out. I mean, it's just, and it works in every industry. I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to replace everybody, but it can surely help you grow. I mean, I think it's just a major miss if you don't spend time and energy and effort really trying to understand it and grow it and make it part of your business.
Yes, no, I agree with you. How does Beam work with AI?
It's a good question. We have been big fans of AI. My co-founder of Beam runs a venture capital firm that focuses on technology. So we've always had it as a big part of what we wanted to do. And we were sort of really focusing on economic development strategies. We want to make sure that our local small businesses are able to grow. And so technology is a big part of that. So not only did we want to talk about it, but we wanted to make sure it was included in our organization. So we have really 2 AI tools that we use. Our first set of clients are our corporate partners. We call them anchors, large institutions, universities, hospital systems, anybody that you typically see with a name on the downtown Pittsburgh area. Those are the types of clients we work with. And so they give us lines of transactions, of procurement transactions. We then analyze those procurement transactions to find opportunities where that spend that they have could be invested into the local market as opposed to leaving the Pittsburgh economy. And we do that through an AI business analytics tool. On the other side, we support our small businesses, right? If we're trying to shift money to local small businesses, we also have to provide a tool for our small businesses. And the reality is that our small businesses typically don't have access to the coolest, latest features. And so we were very conscious to provide them with a strategic planning tool that allows them to scale and grow their business in typically an environment where, small business owners are alone. They don't have the same networks that you do in big corporations. And so the tool is there to help.
Perfect. I think I remember one of our past conversations, you talked about like some kind of chat box. Is that true? And what is that?
Yeah. So inside the small business tool, we have a chat bot, and the chat bot is there to help you sort of answer questions that you typically don't have anyone to ask. And I always like to use the example, right? It's if you're a business owner and you have not woken up at 12 or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. thinking about your business and what are you supposed to do, then you just haven't owned your business long enough, because you will. And that piece when you wake up, who are you going to call? You better not call me. I can say that. But you need to figure out what you're going to do. And so most of us then grab on the phone and you're emailing yourself something, or you write something down, or you go to your computer, and then you're wide awake, right? What's great about this is you can actually pull up your phone, you can put it in and go back and forth with what you're trying to figure out, what you're struggling with, and it'll interact with you in a similar fashion to the ChatGPTs of the world. The difference with this is it's customized to your business. You've put in information about your business, who you are. You can even put in your financials. So it's your own specific chatbot for your business. And so when you ask that question, it's not giving you a general answer like the ChatGPTs of the world. It's going to give you a very specific answer to your industry, to your staff, your revenue. It understands who you are as an individual and a business owner. And that chat experience is enhanced in a significant way. And in the corporate world, you typically have a partner, someone you can bang those ideas off with. Small business owners typically don't have that same level of engagement with other business owners. And so this is an enhancement.
Yeah, I will tell you, there's way too number of times I've woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning trying to figure something out. So I agree with you. So maybe give me an example. So I'm your client, say, and I have this. What kind of help me go through that chat bot? What can it help me do?
Sure. So let's assume I need to hit some growth numbers. Let's assume I need to let's take a real life scenario. Um, tariffs. Tariffs increase my costs of what I'm purchasing. I might need to figure out, how do I remarket this new price? How much price do I need to add on here? What is my tax consequences of adding that on there? Do I need another marketing plan? What should I put in the marketing? What's the script that I potentially want to use with my clients who are going to see this impact? These are all the things that typically people are going to try to figure out, amongst many other things. But where do you figure that out? How do you do that? This is with the chatbot. You can start to interact with it in that capacity and go, I have to raise prices by 15%. I need to talk to my top 5 clients. Give me a talk track on exactly how I should say that. What are the things I should say? What are the bullet points I should highlight? How should I explain this particular problem? And you can actually interact with it in that capacity, and it can give you some information. And you can read that at 2 a.m. and go, I can do that. And guess what happens when you read it and you feel comfortable? You go back to sleep. The rest of us used to get up and go, I would spend the next 2 or 3 hours trying to figure this out before I'd even get there. And so, I think there's some value in that, because it's now focused on my business and my problem, and I can ask it a very specific question, and I'm getting a very specific answer back.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I do agree. I've been up sometimes 1 o'clock, and then I'll go back to bed because I'm sitting there trying to figure it out for sure. So I will tell you one of the things, Joel, you and I have talked about in the past, and you're very, very good at, is just what questions to even ask. So this even ties with AI. What questions I want to grow my business? What questions should I be asking myself, or using this AI to help me grow that business?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting, right? And so it's some of the stuff that you and I work on too, right? It's the merger and acquisition side. And Keep It Simple was a old business development organization. So we would help with sales strategies, figuring out how you wanted to grow your business organically. And I think there are two parts to this, right? There is the organic growth and the inorganic growth. And I think people have to figure out which strategy they want to use, which one is right for them. What makes us unique at Beam is I spent the majority of my career on the organic growth, sales, marketing, product development, internal type stuff. As Bill, on your side, it's been inorganic growth. How do I grow through acquisitions, adding another business, picking up clients? And I think there's some combination of both of those things that makes a lot of sense. And so I think if you want to look into, the inorganic side and how that would grow your business and how that would play out.
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I worked a little bit on mergers and acquisitions. How does AI play into mergers and acquisitions?
So I think AI can play a pretty big role when you think about transitioning, right? So I have to transition a business. And if I was to take over and I was to uh, implement new policies, procedures, HR, accounting, whatever those things were, that's a lot. That's a lot. And you may not have the personnel or the staff to help you sort of strategically figure out what those things are. But being able to put that type of information into a very specific chatbot and tool can help you get those outputs, because it is so many things you have to handle. And what you don't want to do is buy a business and then not transition it properly, because you still have an investment, time, effort, energy. You want that business to succeed as quickly as possible. Sometimes you have a loan, sometimes you're seller financing, whatever those types are, but maybe you're paying something back, maybe you used cash. It doesn't matter. You didn't buy the business to fail. You bought the business to succeed, to grow, to create some sort of wealth. And so I think AI can help you along that path. Not only that on the back end, on the front end, I think if you were selling a business, AI can help you do that, right? It's what are the gaps I have in my business? Our tool can help you figure that out. What are the things I need to do better? You know, seller readiness is a big issue. I mean, you may have a good business, you may have good clientele, but you're running it. And that makes it not sellable. So I think there's AI tools that can help you get that ready as well. And you can make those adjustments. And what do those adjustments look like? And then how do I decide what I'm going to do in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months to get that business ready? How would I build that plan? I don't do that. I do window washing or pest control or whatever it is. I don't do this stuff. You don't have to anymore. You don't have to. That doesn't mean that you're going to miss out on an opportunity to sell your business. So I think AI plays a role on both sides of that.
Yes, no, I agree with you. Kind of go back for a minute. You said with your other part of it, with the anchors and the data you're getting. What kind of data are you getting? How does that help a small business owner in the Pittsburgh area?
So here's what's interesting about the data. We've been doing this for years, and Beam sort of started off really analyzing procurement data very, very early on. What happens is we've analyzed roughly $28 billion worth of corporate procurement data, and that's every transaction.
Wow.
Invoices, how much I buy from so-and-so, right? Of the $28 billion analyzed, $25 billion of it leaves Pittsburgh completely. So we export it. We export those dollars. But most of that money comes from us, local buyers, right? And so if you export $25 billion, that's a lot of economic activity that's not circulating within our communities. So the Pittsburgh the Economy League has a stat that says every dollar invested in Pittsburgh returns $1.96. That means if I export $25 billion, then I'm exporting $50 billion worth of economic activity. Now that $25 billion is over a 2-year period. So it's $12 billion annually that's not flowing through our communities, which is a $24 billion economic impact. That is fundamentally a problem. Now, with that being said, that does not necessarily mean it's uncommon. Most areas and regions around the country export a fair amount. But what if we were able to keep another $1 billion here locally? What would that look like for our neighborhoods, our shops, our schools? What would another $2 billion in economic activity look like? So what we're doing is when we work with our anchors is try to find where those opportunities are to bring some of those dollars back into this community, and then help those small businesses actually scale to meet the demand of the anchors. Some of that scaling that the small business needs to do can come from organic growth or inorganic growth. Maybe there's an acquisition. Maybe this anchors have vendors, clients that work, that are part of their system, that have individuals ready to retire. We don't need to lose that. That can go to a small business. That could be transition. And so there is a strong tie-in to how money moves. And when I say Beam is an economic development organization, it's that. That's economic development. That's money moving to develop our region to be a thriving, strong area, which, quite frankly, we want. Why would we not? We live here.
Yeah. I mean, I know, again, you mentioned economic development several times now. Why is that important to you as a person? Because I know you're very passionate about it. Why is it important to you?
You know, I spent years working at a Wall Street firm, 17 to be exact. And one thing I learned over all those years was that money just moves. It doesn't have a thought. It just moves. It moves for a lot of different reasons, whether it's supply and demand, whether it's just timing, whether it's taxes, whatever it is. Money is always in motion, and money not in motion is a problem. And we saw it in 2008 when money stopped moving in the bond market. We saw it during COVID when people stop spending money. And every time that's happened, you see recessions and panics and all types of negative consequences in the economy that affect everybody. You see restaurants close, you see cars not being bought, you see people not investing in schools, you see it all across the board. And what's fascinating is people don't understand that the economy is one big ecosystem that is tied. It's a chain link of just this circular effect. Everything comes back around, right? It's not, there is no right or wrong or ups and downs. It just moves. It all just continues to move. And if you understand that concept, you realize that individuals, education of individuals, small businesses, large businesses, import, exports, all of travel, buying food, all the things that we do are part of that chain link. And so we live here. And people don't realize that. They want their stoplights to work, and they want to live in good schools, and they want their real estate prices to go up. But they don't want to contribute to the restaurants that support their real estate prices going up. They don't want to contribute to the school system that supports their real estate prices going up. They don't want to do, all of that is intertwined. And so part of our role is to really educate people that that's the reality of the situation. And if you are educated, you can handle it better. And so our job is to make sure people are aware of these economic development pieces, because it's what creates the neighborhoods that we love, that we don't want to leave, that we want our kids to grow. And it's very simple to do, but people just don't understand. And so it's really been a fundamental mission to us of making sure that all neighborhoods are actually thriving economic development department, basically.
Yeah. So you said it's simple to do. What can we as Pittsburgh business owners, and even we live here, what can we all do just a little bit to make a difference?
I would tell you it's, in this day and age, it's employing people, right? It's getting to the point, if you want to be a business, there are two types of business owners, right? There are income replacers, and then there are strategic scalers. Now that's stuff we've made up. You can call it if you want to, but there are people who just want to replace their income. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with those people. They're very valuable to the system. They're fantastic. And I think it's great. But quite frankly, we need more strategic scalers. We want people that want to employ people, want to build businesses. You do not need to employ 1,000 people. That becomes bureaucratic. That becomes the corporate environment. That becomes, those places where they've sort of lost touch with certain things. And that's not because people are bad. That's because the system has to be. When you get that big, you have to do those types of things. What I'm suggesting is that I think our roles as small business owners, or the people who want to be small business owners, is to employ a core group of people, whether it's 5 people or 12 people or 50 people or 3 people. It doesn't really matter. That's how you make impact. That's how you make impact. You provide a service to your neighborhoods, to your communities, to your people that's of value, and you employ people to do that work. You employ people that typically don't fit the corporate mold. And there's so many of us. And I feel like the economy and the world has pushed us all to these big corporations. That's the way it should be. And we've pushed away from the small businesses that are still half of the US economy. 46 or 47% of the US economy is small businesses. 61 million people are employed by small businesses, and yet never gets the attention as the big banks do, or the big airlines, or the big, right, all this other nonsense. Yet we're almost half of that. So it matters.
All right. So 2 questions off that. So number 1, what if I'm driving my car, I hear this podcast, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to my 9 to 5 job. And you know what? Joel raised an interesting point. I might want to buy a business and make a difference. How would I do that? Where do I start?
Yeah, great question. You start by calling Beam. That's the answer. I mean, we're not going to mince words about it. Nobody's really thinking about this. We have a group of subject matter experts that will walk you through it. Our job as a nonprofit in economic development is to educate people to be able to make that decision. It's not my job to manage the transactions, the deal flow, and the LOIs and the NDAs. That's your job. That's the Bill Ogenfritz. That's the subject matter experts who know how to get transactions done. It's not my job to figure out the taxes and the tax consequences and the tax structure. It's not my job to figure out the legal structure. It's not my job to figure out your financial planning situation, all it used to be. It is no longer my job to do that. It is my job to educate you on what is possible. Is it better to buy an existing business? Is it better to buy a big business, a small business, with employees, without employees? Is it better to merge with somebody with your existing business? Is it better for you to buy a franchise? Is it better for you to just get a licensing agreement and sell T-shirts with the NCAA logo on it? Doesn't matter to me. Our job is to help you figure out what path you should be on. That's our contribution to the system and to the economy. What path should you be on? We then connect you with the subject matter experts, the Bill Ogan Fritzes of the world, the Jason Flowers of the world, the people that are focused on these types of things. Once you do that and you buy a business or you sell a business and want to buy something else, if you're buying a business, we're there to help you transition that business. We're help you to take it over and get to another level. Your first step is to just have the conversation to educate yourself. If you educate yourself, you'll win. That's all you got to do.
Very good. Very good. What, so I'm driving, let's say I have, a corporate marketing job, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that as my small business. Uh, where do I start? What's the first step? Just how would you help them?
Yeah. So we would have you come in, right? We talk to you a little bit, learn a little bit about you. We are adding a new assessment tool that will also tell you a little bit about yourself, right? So I'll give you an example as somebody who has started a business from scratch, who helped build a business with an existing business through small transactions, and someone who owned a franchise. I have all three of those, and there's really only three ways to grow your business. I've done all three. To figure out which one's right for you. Franchising is a great way if you don't have systems in place and want a network of people, and want to be able to have business ownership, but at the same time, don't really want to do it all from the bottom, right? And you want a brand. You need a brand. You need a reputation. Franchising would make sense for you. But if it's not the right thing for you, we have access to through that $28 billion, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different business categories you've probably never even considered. One of my favorite examples is instrument rentals, right? Like my kids play music instruments. I don't even know who the company is. I can tell you I cut a check to them every month. I can tell you everybody else in my district cuts a check to them every month, right? And that's a business that no one even knows. You don't pay attention to. Yet it's a real business. It's a real business doing real revenue with real recurring revenue, everything in the world you would possibly want to have. And yet people don't even know it exists. And so our job is to help you sort of identify those things, right? To go, I didn't even know that was a thing. I'd love to learn more about that. And so we have access to all of those different types of categories to help you kind of ideate. We're not suggesting you choose one. We're just helping you start to think outside the box. And the goals of that first session is to get your antennas up. And I tell you all the time, once your antennas up, you will find all types of unique businesses around you that you have just ignored. That's the goal of the ideation. That's the first step. Because buying a business, buying a franchise is a process. And if you think it's going to happen in a month, we'll fix that. You come and talk to me. We'll explain to you that we don't want you doing that. So,
Yeah. So, Joel, have you ever heard this question? So, I want to buy a business. You ready for this? That cash flows. What does that mean to you, and how do you respond to that?
what's funny, Bill, is I've never heard that. First time for everything, I suppose, right? Like, who doesn't want cash flow? I would tell you, when I managed money, people were like, let's buy a stock that's going to go up. You think? I mean, why would I? So I think people get stuck that like, that's what they want, but there's so much more complexity to it than that. And this is where it becomes this educational piece. We're not suggesting you don't want cash flow. What we're suggesting is there's a lot of other factors to add to that. It's an additive piece. It is not the only thing. And I think people struggle with that because they don't know what else to think. That's why they end up at that spot, because that's all they're used to. When you work in corporate America, the only thing they offer you is cash flow. They don't offer you anything else. They offer you a paycheck that drives cash flow. And if you're going to leave, what's your biggest concern? My biggest concern is, how do I pay my bills? So cash flow becomes that first question. But the reality is cash flow is important, but it's not the only thing that's important. And cash flow increases if you do some of the other things. If you want to get more cash flow and then sell your business, you got to do some other things in addition to that too. But the cash flow is always sort of my favorite starting point. I like to tell people that when they go, we want a business with cash flow. I go, no, we're going to find you something that's losing money and you'll be out of business in 6 months. How's that sound? what else would we be looking for? So anyway, it's a fun conversation.
No, I agree with you. And we've had a couple of those conversations with a couple of clients. So I agree with you. Yes. What I will say is that what I love really is that, we've been partnering up recently. And one of my main difficulties was I do have the clients that come to me and say, hey, okay, I want to leave my corporate job. And going through that process is not a simple process trying to get that down, like hey, client A. And I ask them that, what do you want to do? And sometimes they have no idea at all. Some will be stuck on one idea and it's like, that may not even be good in Pittsburgh. So what happens to speak when a couple of those challenges happen to you? Because that's why I love it. I get to refer them to you now, and you help them through that process.
I like to use the real estate example because people don't buy businesses, but most people buy real estate, right? And if you have a water heater problem and you have decent neighbors, you can walk over and ask them. There's no one really to ask, right? So like there's this piece of it that's so foreign. And as somebody who spent 20 plus years in sales, I tell people all the time, I go, do you know why and I'll ask you, Bill, let's see if you know. Do you know why there's no salespeople at a grocery store?
Because they know what they want when you walk in.
Yeah. See, this is what happens because I've clearly given you the example before. You could not have figured that out.
Teaching moment, Joel. At least I learned tonight. I was debating, should I answer or should I not? Because you're right.
No, but the reason that there's no salespeople in a grocery store is because you know how to buy it. I don't need a salesperson. A salesperson's job is to help educate the buyer so that they can make a wise decision, right? And I think people miss that. And so when it comes to buying a business, it's not a grocery store. You don't know how to buy ketchup and mustard. This is completely and totally foreign. Real estate, you still don't buy without a realtor. You still try not to sell it without a realtor. I mean, you can, just like you can buy a business without a broker or some expertise. And so I think it's really important that we understand that our jobs here are to help people become more comfortable with this type of transaction that they're really not familiar with, because it's so broad, so deep, so wide, so complicated, so many variables. And it's not even like the variables you started with month one are the same variables that will exist in month 4. Right. And so I think there's a lot of those factors, and getting people to that point is really sort of what we believe our expertise is. It's working with those folks. And quite frankly, our expertise has always been with small business owners. So we want to work with them on the front end and the back end, right? Because you're eventually going to be a small business owner, right? Or if you sell something, you may buy something else. And so there is this knowledge around how the small business owner interacts, how the small business owner thinks, what are their struggles, what are their challenges, that makes me unique. And we think that's a great value add to sort of what you all are doing.
Yeah. So then my second question is this. Now, instead, I'm driving, listening to this podcast, and I own a small business. I have 5 employees, but I'm struggling a little bit with revenue. I'm hoping and praying I get that UPMC, PNC contract tomorrow. What's your thoughts? How do you help them?
I think what we would do is the same sort of consulting work that we've done, right? Whether it's the 3 years after that we support you after you buy a business, it's a readiness program. We run a readiness program. Like, how do I get to the position where I can turn, this is all Wall Street terms, my illiquid asset into something liquid, right? How do I get something in a position where it can be sold? That requires work, and that requires you sharing information and understanding it. And there's no other way to do this but to just say, okay, here's where, let me be realistic, right? Let me be realistic that all of my clients are connected to me as the owner in some capacity. And if I was to leave, they would not stay. Let me be realistic with that, because a buyer doesn't necessarily want that problem. Or that 3 of the employees are my children, and they're also good. I mean, whatever the challenges are, they're not necessarily apparent if you've been running your business because you were running your business. And I think people forget that that's not the same skill. Selling my business and running my business are 2 completely different things. That's like saying, well, I run my business so I can do all the legal work. Unless you're a lawyer, you can't. And so I think that's exactly what this is about too. It's helping people realize that this is a completely separate skill set that requires time, energy, no different than you put into your finances and your accounting and your legal work. It takes time, and you have to understand it, and you would hire an expert to help you figure those things out. That way you maximize your value. Why start the business if you can't maximize your value?
I agree. I totally agree. I totally agree. And so just in summary of this, with these two different areas you talked about, how does AI tie in with both these? What AI are you using AI? I'm assuming then to help with these mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah. So right now the AI is really on the readiness program. So helping people get ready, and the AI is going to be once you buy the business, right? So again, our AIs are tied directly to the two parts, the beginning and the end. And so, the AI allows people to really understand where their challenges are, right? The tough part about consulting on small business in a readiness piece is that, and as the saying goes, you called their baby ugly, right? And so you have to be very careful of that, because some people have spent 40 years on this. Some people may have gotten this from their parents. I mean, there's a piece to this, and they have to realize that it's not quite what someone else may want, right? And so the putting your information into a completely and totally unbiased chat bot tends to reduce that state, because they may not believe it, but it's not my opinion, right? It's what it says. You can argue with it if you want to, but you put the information in, and this is the output it gave you, right? And so that data piece sort of helps people realize that they should probably make some changes, makes it a much easier conversation. And the same thing on the small business side. Once you own that business, it's the same sort of consulting that happens. It's, if I tell you, maybe it's my own biases in going into it, but when you put your information in and it gives you an output back, you sort of look at it a little bit more objectively than you probably did if it came from another human, which is its own set of phenomenon, and probably a whole nother psychological podcast.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe I'll think about that. All right. So changing the subject a little bit. What is one challenge our listener community could help you solve? You or your company solve?
One challenge I think that everybody could solve is, um, I think people struggle with a belief system that mergers and acquisition isn't for them. And we've done a really good job. Let me rephrase. Wall Street has done a really good job of going, M&A is only for the wealthy, right? That's the truth. But quite frankly, most firms don't get down to the $500,000 to $5 million space. They just don't do it. And so I think what would be powerful is if we started to talk about this more, if the small business owners were able to talk about what's out there and how they did it and how they acquired other business, or the way they transitioned their business from even their parents, or whatever those things are. If we were able to get people to change their belief system that this is possible, I think that would be a huge value. And the stats show how many businesses over the next 10 to 15 years will potentially be sold just by baby boomers alone. Just in the Pittsburgh MSA, it's like 86,000. And if it's 86,000 baby boomer businesses to be sold over the next 10 to 15 years, the stats say that only 20 to 30% of those will ever be in a position to be sold. So if 20% are in a position to be sold, 68,000 small businesses will close. If that's not an economic problem, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we've seen it in Pittsburgh. You've seen stores go dark. It is much easier to kill a business than it is to build one. And so when something goes, customers go elsewhere. You don't replace it. But 68,000 businesses in Western Pennsylvania is an incredibly large number that would leave storefronts and vacancies. And you know what's going to happen is the big blocks are just going to buy it up. And we're going to run into the same problems we live with today, where it's cost cutting and you get fired. There's no competitive advantage. But I genuinely think that in this environment, people want smaller community-based businesses. That's in my opinion going to be the new future of the way the economic system works, because too many people are going to be burned by their loss of jobs in the federal government and their loss of jobs in the corporations that relied on federal contracts. And all of these things are going to just start to be a problem. The small businesses are and have always been the safe haven for a lot of people. And that's not about to change. We just have to have a strategy to help that work.
Yes, definitely. We'll definitely get your contact information later, but I'm assuming, if I'm starting to think about all this, really my first step is to reach out to you, right? I mean, if I'm thinking, hey, I want to help, or I want to grow a business, or I want to change, I'm assuming the first step is contact you.
100%. I mean, we offer free consultations. We are a nonprofit. That is part of the value we add to the ecosystem. It is a very easy call. You can find us at beamcollaborative.org, And you can reach out to us. We'd be happy to have the conversation. Love to talk to you and meet with you and see if there's an opportunity to give you some advice and send you down the right path.
Perfect. Perfect. So, Joel, the first half we learned from you. The second half, we will learn more about you. So, take me back in time when little Joel, did you know you'd be running and growing a business now?
I think I always wanted to, right? I went to the University of Miami, and I chose Miami for two reasons. I grew up in DC, so let me give you the first reason. It's Miami. The second reason was because they had an entrepreneurship program, and so I went there because I wanted to get a degree in entrepreneurship. I didn't, but I got a degree in finance. But regardless, I always did. I always wanted to be both my parents owned businesses. My mother and father owned businesses. So it's just what I wanted to do. So the fact that I get to do it in such a meaningful way is fantastic.
So, Joel, I can't believe I'm about to open the store, but I'm going to. You love Miami. You love Miami. And tell the listeners about one little story when me and you were apart with somebody and you went on about you at Miami.
Wow. You are opening this story. Wow. I grew up in the North Hills sitting at a restaurant. Gentleman you were having coffee with, I think, prior to me, came out of the restroom. You made an introduction. And he ended up living in Coral Gables, not far from where I lived in Coral Gables, in South Florida. And we ended up having this entire conversation that probably should have been about 2 or 3 minutes. That if I had to guess, he and I were both talkers. That probably lasted 15 minutes. Now, for what your listeners don't know, is that was probably the most painful 15 minutes you've probably ever had in your life. I mean, if you all could have seen Bill's face, for what it's worth, I think he was done listening to this conversation the minute the word Miami was said. He knew we were going down this path. He was like, "Oh, you live in Miami? I live in Miami." It was over. And we're in Pittsburgh having this conversation. There was very little interest left,
But I know you love your Miami. That's why I bring it up. I figure I'll give you a chance. You do talk about Miami, and it's really good. But you're right. It probably was the most painful. And if it did go 10 minutes, it felt like 4 hours and 10 minutes for sure. But yes, it was good.
Bill, for what it's worth, I'm pretty sure we then spent the next 15 minutes talking about why you hated that stuff. And then I think we probably spent the last 15 minutes trying to convince you why you should do more networking, of which you politely ignored me.
Yes. But remember now, I did remember why people walk in the grocery store. Do they need salesmen? I do listen.
You did remember that. I have to give you credit. And I was like, he probably heard this one when I said it too. But
yeah, I did remember. But yes, you and I are definitely different on networking. But I do find it funny because I'm enjoying it. I like learning about people, so this is actually interesting. But yes, that conversation about Miami was painful. But moving on. So you're in your present day here now. Running Beam. Tell me a little bit about Beam. We heard a little bit indirectly what you are, but what is Beam? What does Beam do?
Yeah, Beam was set up as a nonprofit organization to drive local strategy, right? To look at what the economy is giving us locally, and then figure out how do we create more economic advancement, mobility for our local residents using small businesses. We have talked about economic development, typically comes from federal governments, state governments, goes into schools. But the reality is that small businesses are an incredibly integral part of the economic system. So we say economic development. The economic development is just economic system. It's the system of how money moves within Pittsburgh in the region. And so our focus was to really look at small businesses, really focus on how do small businesses impact those types of things. And that's really our focus. We're not trying to figure out how do we help large businesses be successful. We're not doing strategic planning for them. We do strategic planning and strategy work for small businesses, typically up to about $5 million.
What made you co-found this? I'm actually, this is a question I actually don't know the answer to. What made you go from your sales job, your owner of that company, to this? What made you do that?
Yeah. So in 2021, I was hired by the Hillman Foundation to do a research project. That research project was to understand how much money was actually being spent within non white male communities. So how much money was just being spent locally, right? So it was a local and diverse strategy. So how much money from corporations is being spent with Black owned businesses, veteran owned businesses, women owned businesses, Asian owned businesses, and how much of that is actually being spent locally. So we were trying to understand a better idea of what that procurement spend looked like. We did that work for a couple months, and it really started us on this path of understanding how much money leaves. Once we knew that roughly a little more than 10% of it actually stays, so it's like 12% of it actually stays within the region. Even less of it goes to some of our diverse demographics. We realized that it needed to be solved. And the only way to solve it was to create an organization that focused on it. It needed intentionality. You can't lose 25 of $28 billion and then go, meh, maybe we'll just make it work by happenstance. That wasn't going to happen. It needed significant intentionality. And so what we did was create a model and an engagement tools that help those small businesses actually retain those dollars. Because quite frankly, anchors are looking for cost savings as much as they can, not necessarily looking for local development. So part of it is educating them on why it matters and what that return is to them and why it's so important. And so it really was stemmed from the research project of going, if we don't solve this, we're going to continue to lose more and more dollars in this region, which, quite frankly, if you know Pittsburgh's history, that's not new. We've been watching this happen for 50, 60 years. And it just needs to stop. So,
yeah, I know you're very passionate about it. I'm impressed with all the work you have done. You and your partners have done. That's amazing what you do for the Pittsburgh area. So if you can go back in time and meet yourself the day you founded your company, so either one, Beam or your prior one, what advice would you give yourself?
in hindsight, I would have created more strategic partnerships. And I think I didn't really understand the value of having good partners. I did during Beam, which is why you and I worked together, but I didn't then. Then it was when I had started Keep It Simple, owned a franchise, and I thought the franchise would do enough stuff. So they were a great franchise, but it wasn't a strategic partnership. You shouldn't go at this alone because lots of people are out there alone and don't want to be. And so just finding the right partners, the right people, centers of influence, right? Just getting better partnerships. You don't have to do this all so organically or cold call-ish, for lack of a better word. There are people that are connected in different parts and communities that are willing to share resources, time, energy, and even opportunities. And it just was a big miss on my part. And so I tell people all the time, I go, partnerships win. It's very difficult to not be successful when you have really, really good partnerships. Bad partnerships can be as much of a problem, but a good partnership is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, it's great advice. Definitely great advice. So I know family is very important to you, but what do you do outside of work? What do you do in your fun time, free time?
That's another really good question. I don't do anything, Bill. I just work. I just put my head down and sit in the computer, play with AI. Now, I got three kids, but my two boys, 10 and 8, play a lot of lacrosse, and I coach the youth lacrosse program. So it's a lot of fun. I grew up playing lacrosse, but it's a blast. And so kids love it. I get out there and what I love most, and you know this, is, man, it is so fun to yell at kids that aren't mine. That's just a great day. No, it's a lot of fun. The kids are great. They're all 10 and under, but they're just fast learners. They just love playing. They just still love the game. And I love lacrosse because at the end of the day, there's no $100 million contract at the end. So the parents are good, right? Like everybody there's still a love of the game. Now I'm not telling you it's that way in the New Yorks and DCs and Phillies where it's really serious, but here in Western Pennsylvania, people are still very much just enjoying the game, and it's fun. And I think the money component on the back end of youth sports has really taken out the youth part of youth sports, and we haven't lost that in Western Pennsylvania lacrosse, and it's something to be pretty proud of. So it's a lot of fun, and I spend an inordinate amount of time on it, probably too much.
I think that's one thing I respect about you. We talk about your family life, and your boys and your wife are very, very important to you. So that's good. And you need a balance. I think you need a balance because working all the time is not good either. So you need that. Um, I find I did jujitsu, and my coach always tells us that the kids, because obviously he teaches adults, I'm 55, he teaches adults 30, 40, 50, but he also teaches kids, and he's always amazed that the passion to love, they'll try it, they don't care. And us learners, us adults, struggle more with learning than these young kids do because they just go after it. And they just have fun. They experiment. It's great.
Why do you think that is, Bill?
Well, I'm stubborn, so I know why I do it. I'm just stubborn and I don't listen. You know what I mean? But I don't know about all adults. Why is that? You tell me.
It's a really, really interesting psychological concept. And I don't know the psychological terms, but it's the same sort of challenge we have with buying businesses, right? Like it's the same thing I told you about, like just our belief systems. They don't have trashy belief systems as kids. They don't. There's no belief that they can't do it. Of course they can. You know why they know they can do it? Because how their friends just do it. So they can totally do it. Like there isn't this. Imagine like a 6-month-old, 9-month-old, whenever a baby learns to walk, if they literally had in their head that they could never walk, you know what they would do? They would never walk, but they don't.
Right.
They just consistently try it over and over and over. And they fail for months. They fail until they figure it out. We put these ridiculous contextual blocks around our own success all the time. That's what makes kids great. Like they don't care. They just do. That's his point. And you see it all the time with these kids. You're like, try this. And they're like, okay. They don't go, maybe it won't work, coach. They're like, I'll try that. And then when it works, they're like, that worked. Simple belief systems. And it's a fascinating thing. It's just, we all have gotten away from that work as adults. And we really have. We've really found ways.
I totally do agree. I think kids are fascinating in that aspect. But it's sure, though, kind of tying this up a little bit, though, there are these entrepreneurs who do fail and fail and fail and fail. And then they usually become very successful. So you're right. A lot of I'll speak for me. I don't want to keep failing. Here, I'll tie the Miami story together here, right? Sales. I don't like keep hearing no, 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 no. And you were a person who always did that and overcome obstacles, and that's made you very successful. I don't like to fail, 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 fail. You're right, though. I need probably the kid in me a little bit more to just go ahead and try things and fail and get back up and do it again and do it again. But you're very good at that. You're very good at taking the no's in sales and moving on, improving your systems to succeed. I respect that in you.
Well, I appreciate it. And I was teaching my kids this over the weekend because they're still trying to figure it out. I said, you have to make a decision when something happens to you. It fits in one of two buckets. It either fits in a matters bucket, doesn't matter bucket. You then have to have a certain set of behaviors for how you react to something that matters and something that doesn't matter. If it matters, feel free to cry because you're upset. If it doesn't matter, don't cry because that's not going to help you. It doesn't matter. But they don't know what matters and doesn't matter, right? And so every no didn't matter to me. It just doesn't, because guess what? If you said yes right now, you were just going to drag me down a path to eventually tell me no. So just tell me no in the beginning. So it doesn't matter. That's actually fine. What does matter? When you say yes, because now I actually have to execute. I have to make it work. So, and I think people struggle with it, right? Like what matters and what doesn't matter. And the behaviors that fit behind it, once you determine it matters or doesn't matter, is what really makes the difference.
Yes. No, I totally agree. This might be a whole new podcast about failings, Joel, but we'll leave that for a later date.
Let's do that one, Bill. I'm in.
Yes. All right. We'll have to set it on our calendars.
Yeah, but I get to ask the questions this time. No. I get to ask you all the questions about failing.
As long as we're networking, having small talk, I'll love it. No problem at all.
I am only going to make it small talk.
That's good. That's excellent. Excellent. With that said, Joel, if I did want to connect with you, what's the best way to connect with you and your company?
Our website, Beam Collaborative, BEAM collaborative.org. You can reach us on there. You can find our contact information. LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn under Joel Burstein. Feel free to connect with us there and say you heard us on the podcast, and we'll be happy to, have somebody on our team reach out to you. James Myers on our team is our VP of Business Development. You can always reach out to James if you're familiar with James. Joe Massaro, who is our Chief Strategy Officer. People may know from Massaro Corporation. Reach out to Joe if you know Joe. Any way you want to get in touch with us to grow the region, we're happy to meet with you.
Perfect. Again, your company does a great job for the region. So again, Joel, I want to thank you for all your time, new insight. I always love learning from you, so I appreciate you definitely being on the show today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Bill. I appreciate it.
And, thank you, audience. If you learned something today or laughed, tell somebody about the podcast. Again, Joel, thank you very much for being on the show. This has been another exciting episode of Steel City Growth. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Steel City Growth. Thanks for joining us. For show notes and more, visit steelcitygrowth.live. Steel City Growth is proudly sponsored by Murphy Business of Pittsburgh, offering expert guidance in buying, selling, and valuing businesses to help you achieve your goals. Until next time.